This is definitely not going on the podcast.
Maybe there'll be parts of it that you could isolate, but I'm not sure.
What I'll say is I care more about the conversation than the podcast, and like it's not about trying to find good bits for the podcast. I think that it doesn't matter because I'll edit it out if it's bad, because life is nothing but a take. Join our cult.
Okay. Life is nothing but a take. Join our cult. Read my book.
Please like and subscribe. So I hear you getting ice out. Does that mean you're pouring yourself a drink?
Yes, sir.
Do you want to do a little whiskey talk? Because, you know, the podcast is called It's Not About the Whiskey, but we haven't actually said anything about whiskey yet. I think it'll be just interesting enough to say, like, all right, now we're drinking Lafroig, and this is this, and it's this, and this. Then we go from there.
I feel like the most interesting parts of it are going to be from us just
tasting
like, you know what it smells like? It smells like that square of shitty bubble gum.
For sure.
So quick question. Should we take a moment to do that right now?
I've made the executive decision that it's Lafroig.
All right. And what is it? Lafroig 10, right?
Yeah, Lafroig 10. And I think we should rehearse. I think we should try to do a little intro before we pour.
No, it's a terrible idea. I'm offended by that suggestion.
All right. Yeah, now that I say it, it is weird that I'm just like, all right, I'm about to call action on the podcast.
I just have to.
Hello, what's up, all of our listeners? Hello, listeners, and welcome to It's Not About the Whiskey, episode 2. We'll let you know what the title of this podcast is when you download it. I'm Gayev, and this is my co-host, Bamis.
What up?
And this is a podcast about two friends having conversation, but we also like to drink whiskey. And today, what whiskey are we starting with, Bamis?
We're starting with Lafroig 10-year.
Wow, that was the sound of the cork coming out. You had a real tight cork on that.
That was not planned.
I think it worked out perfectly.
It worked out perfectly, but that's just...
that wasn't a sound effect that we added in Spotify for podcasters.
So I've got some Lafroig 10 in my glass. How about you?
I just poured some Lafroig 10 into my Glencairn. Is it end with an N or an M? I could look at the bottom of the glass and find out, but I'm not going to do that.
It's a Glencairn.
Glencairn.
Yeah, there's a story that I don't remember exactly what it is now. The guy who created the glass, I think it's like the names of two streets that he lived on smashed together. I think he lived on Glen something at some point, and then he lived on something Cairn, and so he put Glencairn together when he made this tulip glass.
Is it fair to guess that he's either Scottish or Irish, or is Glencairn? It sounds Scottish.
I don't remember where he's from.
I'm sure one of our listeners will find out and leave a comment. So Lafroig 10, it is an Islay. It is known for being one of the smokiest, peatiest whiskeys.
Mm-hmm. That's right. The label says the most richly flavored of all Scotch whiskeys, which is,
I mean, it's definitely hyperbole, but like, I'm not going to say it's not, because every time I've had Lafroig, it's like, it is super rich and complex. So.
Yeah, it's not a background whiskey. Every time we ever actually nose it, we're always like, Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Should we nose it?
Well, let's eyes it first.
All right, those are the top two holes.
Yeah, the top two holes, because this is not super dark. I don't remember Lafroig being a distillery that specifically doesn't use any coloring, but this looks fairly light to me.
It's not super dark, but it does. I mean, to me, it doesn't look light either. To me, it kind of looks like it's in the middle. To me, it looks like kombucha.
I mean, it's kombucha. I mean, it does spend, the youngest whiskey is 10 years old, so it spends time in oak. I mean, it's used oak and it's bourbon oak.
The longer time it spends in a casket, the darker it'll become. Is that scientifically accurate?
I think broadly, generally, yeah.
But a lot of whiskeys use that whiskey colored
Well,
whiskey coloring.
the other thing, I think that most of the color will come early in the aging process. I think that like in the first few years, it's going to get most of its color, and then during the rest of its aging, it'll be less. But I think still it'll make a difference. But I think it's way less as time goes on.
Just because it has more to take from the wood at that time. Like it's just going to soak in the whatever is giving it the chemicals that are giving it probably its taste and its color.
And then there are some people who believe that the reason that something that's really old is a finer whiskey is because there are certain things that just take a long time in a quiet cask, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, without getting into a whole big thing, we've already been talking about this. So you want to move down a hole to the nose?
Let's move down to the nose hole.
All right.
Get like sweet rubber.
I get salty rubber. But now that you said it, I also get the sweetness.
Well, I almost said the same thing now that you say, like, yeah, it is kind of salty. It's a complex fucking whiskey. We should really get Lafroig to sponsor this episode.
This episode is brought to you by...
What if we just bleeped out the name of the whiskey that we were drinking the whole time and see if people, see if
you just have to guess based on the tasting notes?
Yeah, exactly. I want to say, and this is like really brief, but I want to say like apple pie, like under the layers, a little bit of baked apple pie.
I would never have said it on my own, but now that you said it.
Oh, this is why we got a podcast that's not about the whiskey. Isn't it so interesting that like describing smell is like there's just in English at least there are so few words that are just descriptors for the olfactory sense, you know? And so like all the time that we're talking about it, we're kind of talking about it in terms of taste. It's just like nose taste, you know, because like what does sweetness smell like? I don't know. Well, for me, when I think of sweetness, it's hard for me to say like, oh yeah, this smells sweet, you know, but like you can describe all sorts of different sweet tastes. And when you try to describe the complexity of sweetness for the nose, you end up kind of just going to the tastes. I wonder if that's just because the olfactory sense is like the least studied or the least understood sense of the five senses.
I mean, it's a really interesting question, isn't it? I think it's that the olfactory sense is the kind of in a way the least appreciated one, isn't it? Because we celebrate foods. What does it taste like? Like there's all, you know, there's what's that fancy word for cuisine? Gastronomy or whatever.
Yeah.
But as far as smells, the only things we have are like, it's lemon scented. Okay. You know, it's a cleaner, so it's lemon scented. It doesn't have the same.
But you could break down what lemon tastes like. Like, how would you describe what the taste of lemon? You wouldn't say it's lemon tasting. You'd say it's like, well, it depends on the lemon, but it's going to be like kind of tart and sour with maybe a little bit of, you know, sweetness. That probably actually lemon doesn't really have too much sweetness. I'll edit that out. But like, you're going to say like, how are you going to?
There's a brightness. There's a
brightness.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Which brightness is a visual word. So that's interesting.
The other thing is when you're nosing a whiskey, I feel like if you're going to enjoy that process, you're going to want to get it. Sometimes you're going to want to get somewhat poetic about it. One of my favorite whiskey reviews I've ever read was on Distiller. It was a review for Lafroig Udahagen. Lafroig Ugadal. We definitely need to record something about the fact that I said Lafroig Ugadal, because if there's ever any kind of real whiskey person who ever listens to our thing, like even if Bagel listens to that, like he's going to give me such a hard time, because also there are way more whiskey releases that I've never even heard of than there are, you know, bottlings that I know anything about. That one happens to be one that's like, I have a bottle of Ugadal. When I said Lafroig instead of Ardbeg, I was a foot and a half away from my bottle of Ardbeg Ugadal. It's the first Ardbeg I ever tasted. I love it. It's got a lot of sherry and a lot of peat, which, you know, those are big things for me and whatever. I just can't believe I got that my brain didn't catch that. you know?
I know. And considering that I am the editor, I have total power over whether this little explanation gets edited in right in the middle of the joke or not.
Well, so she's life. And the review was something like, I'm in a castle. There's someone in the next room, like smoking meats. My brother is in the hallway spraying an aerosol can. It's 8:30 p.m. You know?
Yeah, because smell is so connected to memory in ways that we probably don't really understand.
And like, you know, some people will give you tasting notes and they'll be poetic in a way that's like, you know, it's pretentious. And so some people will try to keep it simple because they don't want to be perceived as being pretentious. But I'm not getting poetic about it so that because of what I want you to think about me.
Yeah.
I am not being poetic about it because I want you to think something about my intellect or my knowledge about whiskey. I'm just enjoying pontificating. I'm just being poetic about a thing like, this reminds me of summertime in 1988.
Yeah.
You know, in the town I grew up in. Like, that's enjoyable for me. It doesn't, you know what I mean?
It's like it brings an element of storytelling that is not otherwise there. But I think that like the key to keeping it not pretentious is keeping it like as close to true as you can. Because if you're like some guy that's being like, oh yes, it smells like an Irish castle after a rainfall, and you're like, motherfucker, you've never been to Ireland.
I don't know. I feel like the key to it not being pretentious is just knowing the intention behind it. You know, like when if I taste whiskey with someone who's like, well, it smells like heather honey and this thing and that thing, and you know, if here's a telltale thing, and there have been some like big whiskey experts that I've seen say things like, where someone will say, well, I'm getting coconut. And then the person will say, well, you wouldn't get coconut because that would come from such and such barrel. But like, all right, don't fucking tell me about the fucking barrel. If I get coconut, I get coconut, and shut the fuck up. Like, that's pretentious. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, don't tell me why I am experiencing what I am, because you don't actually know how I experience the color blue. So maybe you should shut the fuck up about your coconuts.
Exactly. When you said, very good. When you said apple pie, my first thought was, oh, that's unusual, because I wouldn't think, because apple pie is something that I get from sherried whiskeys. Apple pie is something I get on maybe like a Macallan or a thing like Macallan. So to me, I was like, oh, that's kind of counterintuitive. But then I nosed it and I looked for it because you said it, and I found it. There's, you know.
I wonder if part of it's because humans, our olfactory senses, it's kind of, we've evolved into it being kind of the least important. Like if I could like have a whiskey tasting with my cat, and I was like, oh, you know, it kind of smells like moss. And he's like, motherfucker, this is not moss. What, have you never had to forage in the forest? Like cats are like, you know, animals, the sense of smell is so much more important for them. They have such a strong, I mean, not all animals, but so many animals, they have a much stronger sense of smell. And I've always associated with that of just because it's like, there's so many smells in the wild that you gotta like really know them well so you can smell a predator or you can smell prey.
Right.
Maybe I'm just making that up. Maybe like being out of the food chain has just like our olfactory sense has gotten to realize, like, has just we've worked it out less.
That's really interesting.
Let's move down a hole.
All right. It's not about the whiskey.
Yeah, it's not about the whiskey.
Sláinte. Oh, wow.
I got like banana bread on the pre-arrival.
I'll come with you on that. It's not as smoky as I thought it was going to be.
I was going to say the same thing. Like, it's hitting me less in the smoke department than it usually does. It's a little smoother it's a little smoother.
Interesting, because usually when we drink this whiskey, we're like, holy shit, it's so peaty.
Yeah, it's like, this is a car on fire.
Yeah, well, this is a deep African sensation.
Right. We're real pretentious about how peaty Lafroig is.
Thanks for having been here with me in my podcast for an audience of one.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for making a podcast with me. All right. Peace and love.
It's not about the whiskey. Hail Satan.